Southern California, yeah.
Born and raised our DNA. Laugh and cry to what we say. We hit you with that wordplay.
4053.
What episode are we on? D, they feeling like they be zombies, all dressed in Abercrombie.
SoCal DNA coming in live. 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night. COVID got you sitting inside. Why not sip one and free your mind?
Cheap thrills, popping pills, stat cash, spend it fast.
Listen to all of Don's lies as Arjun act like he's surprised.
And I probably should have asked you this earlier when we were chatting, man, but are you a fan of Boba?
I like the tea, but I'm not actually a fan of the boba balls. It's just something about them. I know they're just tapioca, and you should chew on them, and I guess they take a while to digest once they're in your stomach. But I just find them unnecessary. I know it's weird. I know people enjoy boba from different sizes, but whenever I go to any kind of boba tea place and I'm with people, I always go for no boba. Give me the tea, the almond milk tea, or whatever the milk tea is, but just take out all the boba. I'm good.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, man. A little atypical, not your everyday run-of-the-mill Boba kind of person. I'm sure like the person on the other side of the counter is like, what? Really? Really? Okay. No 50-cent upcharge for you.
Yeah, I just never liked the idea of having solid chunks of anything in a drink. That concept to me, I know it's popular. Don't get me wrong. Like you go to any of these, Taiwanese milk tea shops or whatever. Class 302 is a very popular one. I'm sure you've heard of it.
Oh yeah.
They have a lot of these like specialty drinks where it's not just boba that they can put in. They can put in pudding. They can put in like all these different mix-ins, and it's like,
delicious.
well, at what point does this liquid concoction stop being a liquid and it becomes something else, like some dessert?
Okay. Yeah, no, and that's what I was going to bring up. I think boba, or whatever you get at these tea shops that are not purely liquid, are typically seen almost as a snack, right? So, and I think it may be a difference in regards to culture, where at least for here, a snack to us is what, like a cookie. A bag of chips, maybe, or some pieces of fruit.
Sure, yeah.
For me, lasagna. But in other countries, picking up
lasagna. And our fans in like sub-Saharan South Africa are like, "Damn, this guy eats lasagna for snack. We're struggling with these worms out here." Please continue.
Oh, that was good though, right? That was a good little slide.
That was fantastic. And you slipped it in there like a slippery D. I like it.
It's just a quick pickup, right? Very busy locations whenever I visited, and it's one of those things you get in and out, have something for your long trek on the road. It's both nourishing and can hold you off until dinner time. So another thing that I was going to try to segue into.
Another thing. Okay, that takes the cake.
No, well, because I was going to say, all right, it's atypical, right? We're both atypical people, right? You don't like your boba. I eat my lasagna when I can. Something atypical that we saw. Something atypical we saw a couple weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago now, is the GOAT solidifying his status. And I'm talking none other than TB12, Tom Brady, who lost me money, and I'm pissed. But without a doubt now is the greatest of all time when it comes to being a quarterback in football. I'm pissed, man. That was not a bet that I had wanted to take on. That was a bet agreed upon by forces outside of my control.
I let you pick first.
Hey, but who? No. Who picked? It wasn't me.
What do you mean? Was he? Oh! I understand. That's right. We shouldn't name names, though, right?
I'm not going to. It's recorded.
Yeah,
recorded.
That's true. It is. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have been so mad if the game was closer, but Mahomes throughout the game seemed to be having the worst experience ever on that field. He seemed to be getting his ass handed to him. And which is fantastic if you're a Tampa Bay fan, because their defensive line is stellar. But I thought at least Mahomes had a chance. He is MVP caliber every time he gets the ball. And a couple of those throws and a couple of those skirmishes that he had, you're like, man, this kid is something else. Like, there's a reason why he signed a $500 million contract with the team,
Oof.
right?
Good lord.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, he is the face of the NFL for years to come. But I think Tom Brady put everybody in their place who didn't expect it out of him. That he's like, hey, I'm still here. I am still the face. You're not getting rid of me for a while.
Yeah, I haven't seen a single NFL game this whole season, but I always make it a point to watch the Super Bowl. And so my immediate reaction was actually, well, wait a second. Uh, who are these people on Tampa Bay? Like, Gronk is on Tampa Bay? I didn't know Gronk was even back in the NFL. I thought he was retired.
Hmm.
And then Antonio Brown is back in the NFL. I didn't
Yeah.
even know he was on Tampa Bay.
Yep.
And then the running back, the guy that I used to like, Leonard Fournette, he used to
Hmm.
be on the Jacksonville Jaguars,
Hmm.
but now he's on Tampa Bay. So all of these things were like brand new information for me. But I loved it because I didn't know what to expect. I happened to bet on Brady due to circumstances out of my control as well, and it worked out favorably for me. So I'm happy about that. But I think a greater conversation that has been developing in you know break rooms and Zoom video conferences all over the world would be, yes, okay, Brady is the best NFL quarterback ever. I think that kind of goes without saying. Most people would agree. But let's take it one step further. Would you say that it is proper, first of all, to have a conversation or even a debate comparing Brady, who's an NFL player, to other team sport players, like let's say a Wayne Gretzky,
No.
right, or a Babe Ruth in baseball?
No.
Should we ever have a conversation comparing the best team sports players of all time?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Mm,
I think
mm,
we could compare these individuals outside of their sport to see if they've maybe had an impact on society beyond um, their athleticism. But when you compare different athletes, they had different goals in mind. Some being field goals, some being touchdowns, some being um, a particular shot, whether it be a three or a post up, fadeaway. The skill sets required in different professional sports vary so much that there may be atypical candidates like LeBron who may be able to excel in a different sport, but it's not guaranteed. I think it's an unfair comparison to compare athletes that dominate their sport to other athletes that dominate their respective sport just because
mm.
they're very different in regards to what capabilities one may need. A great comparison is, hey, do we want to compare Tom Brady and Tiger Woods? Both dominated their sport in their respective peaks, and nobody could touch them when they were in the flow of things. But two different sports. I can't see Tom Brady um, hitting a golf ball, driving a golf ball 400 yards. And likewise, I can't see Tiger Woods throwing a ball more than 50 yards, a football. I think.
Well, okay, I understand your argument, and you're bringing up great points, and I agree with most of them actually. But trying to play devil's advocate a little bit here, let's look at, let's say, award ceremonies, right? Whether for movies or for music.
Sure.
Yes, they have the awards for the individual genres, the individual categories. But at the end of the Grammys, they always have Album of the Year, all genres. They always have at the end of the Oscars or whatever it is, Golden Globes, Motion Picture of the Year or Film of the Year, right?
Hmm.
So if they can do that and people accept that, yes, you're comparing things that are very different, they're all cinema, just like these are all sports figures, but it is very hard to do that. I acknowledge that, Don. But if this is a commonly accepted practice in those kind of award receptions, why can't we have that conversation about sports?
Sports is different, man. Sports is different. No, and I get it. I
Okay.
mean, the premise is they're both forms of entertainment. One being physical, one being more creatively written up and developed over time. I just don't. We take my athletic response, then yeah, that's different. But if we're talking purely of the entertainment response, where it's an impact to society, right? Did a
Mhm.
particular performance move people beyond the sport? Then yeah, we can compare it, right? If there is
Then
a
let's do that. Let's do that then,
okay,
because I think you can define Tom Brady's career in many ways
sure,
by epic performances, just like you can define, let's say, to keep this simpler and for our particular audience that we cater to, Michael Jordan's career by
sure,
very, very specific plays.
sure.
And of course, the peaks that he achieved that other athletes couldn't achieve. So, who do you think achieved higher peaks in their respective fields? Would it be Michael Jordan or Tom Brady? If we just focus on those two.
Sure, sure, sure. So let me bring up the points and then because I don't have a clear cut answer. If we
Okay.
talk MJ first,
Okay.
MJ was drafted high and he made somewhat of an immediate impact on the league, becoming the guy. Where even when they joined or he joined, what was it, the Dream Team, he made it clear he was the alpha dog and proved it on the court. Right? I'm sure we've all seen those documentaries of Magic and Larry saying like, "Yeah, all right, yeah, let's teach him his lesson," and then MJ going ahead and wiping him with the floor or on the floor.
Mm. Mm.
Um, so he explored the dominance that he could back up
Mm.
from a very early age, and he proceeded to have 6 championships, if I remember correctly.
I think
Five,
so. That's right.
six, something like that. I
I
don't
think
really
five.
follow these Chicago teams or players, but when he left Chicago to first off play a different sport, some would say that was more of a respect for what he's done for the city and a gift to him to fulfill something that he had wanted to do given his father's professional career, which was play baseball. Did he excel in the major leagues of baseball? I'd say no, and I'm sure you'd agree. And
I
then,
well, okay. I understand you're kind of chronicling his entire career here, but
sure,
I don't think anybody's talking about his baseball when we're
but no,
comparing
no,
Michael Jordan
well,
to Tom Brady.
no. I have a reason for comparing it, right? And then when he came back, he still had some solid time with the Bulls. But then when he went to the Wizards, what happened?
Oh, see, okay, so this is the thing, though. Is it really fair to chronicle his entire athletic career in this way? Because I
Yes,
don't think people.
because
Why?
when we look at Tom Brady now,
Uh huh.
when Tom Brady, first off, when he was drafted very late. No one had expected him, as they did of MJ, to be anything great. He exceeded expectations. He ran with the Patriots, who basically ran the league for a long period of time. And then he left Tampa Bay and still dominated the sport, even at an older age where quarterbacks of his age range aren't supposed to be doing what they're doing. That's why I brought up the whole thing of MJ leaving. When MJ left, he didn't dominate immediately, and it was a different sport. I'll give him that. But then when he came back,
You're no. I think this is a very falsified argument that you're doing. I understand. I understand what you're saying, but I think what you should be focusing on is MJ took a break. He came back and won 3 straight championships.
sure,
How
and
many other athletes in any sport has done that?
I can't think of any.
You can't think of any. I can't think of a single one either. To come back, like literally take a
Sure,
break, not because you're injured, and then come
yeah,
back
but
and
because he
dominate the
wanted to,
league.
sure, and
Yeah.
no, and I get that, and I'm not taking away from the greatness that is MJ, right?
You were by talking about the baseball, by talking about the
No,
Wizards.
no, I'm not
You
taking it
were.
away. I'm just making it a full, clear picture, man. I'm trying to do the last documentary in like 2 minutes. It's difficult. It's difficult.
Okay, sure.
But I mean, that's why I want to. If I wanted to compare the two, I lean on that end, right? Pure
Okay.
entertainment wise, as a fan that appreciates loyalty to the sport and more so to the team, I respect both of them. I don't know. Like, it's
I was
hard.
not expecting that.
No, it's like
Okay.
one of those. If
Okay.
I were to compare just the leaving portion of it, that's the first argument that came to my mind.
Wow. Yeah.
It's
Okay.
like why it's slightly tarnished in MJ's career
Because he
where
took a break for minor league
because
baseball.
he chose to take a break and he chose that path, which is fine, right? Live your dream. He had every right to do what he did, but Brady didn't have that choice. The Patriots didn't sign him because they thought he was done, and he backed it up, and he proved that, hey, I could get more rings than any franchise has ever gotten, and I'm gonna do it in my hometown and do it with someone that believes in me and still collect all the players that everybody kind of treated them as they treated him. Worn out, done with their career, past their prime. There's definitely a recency bias. Let's get that straight. To witness that greatness, and there is a little bit of bias because Kobe is the greatest, and
I can allow that.
So if you want to compare it, basically, who do I think is more prolific in their careers?
Well, I think my initial question, which I think we kind of went on a tangent on, was who had achieved the highest peaks in their respective fields. So I think the way that I would analyze that would say, and maybe you can answer the question for me. For Brady, how many Super Bowls did he attend? Like, how many Super Bowls did he play in?
Let's see. How many Super Bowls did Brady play? Lose. Let's see, lose, because we know he's won 6.
He's won 7, right? I thought he won 7. No.
Is it 7 or 7? Sorry, 7. 10 total. So he's lost 3.
Okay, he's lost 3. Now think about it this way: Jordan has went to finals 6 times, and he's never lost. That is in and of itself something special. Wouldn't you agree? And beyond that, how many not Super Bowl MVPs, but how many league MVPs did Tom Brady win?
Oh man, we could talk about this. We briefly talked about this before. I have no idea. I'm not a Tom Brady fan. I just respect him.
That's fair. Let's see. Tom Brady. How many MVPs? I'm going to look this up really, really quickly. 7 is the NFL leader in Super Bowl wins.
Super Bowl MVPs. He has 4.
Oh, that's what it says.
And he's been named NFL MVP 3 times.
Okay, so Super Bowl MVP is basically like the NBA Finals MVP, right?
Yep.
Okay, got it. So I think Jordan has won NBA League MVP for like 5 seasons. And he's been the Finals MVP for every year that the Bulls won. So that would be 6 of them. And I think that's something special. I think for a guy who reached the peaks that he did in his sport, being not only the best player in the league, but having one of the best teams ever, that's something that doesn't get talked about with Brady, right? Sure. I don't think Brady is good. Okay, but go ahead.
No. If we want to bring up that point, then why are we saying Jordan? There are other great players that have reached higher calibers given those points that we brought up, like Bill Russell.
The thing about Bill Russell is, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as well, is that they played in an era where there weren't that many teams and there wasn't that much competition.
Well, so the same thing could be said about football. There's not that many teams compared to the NBA.
What do you mean by that?
How many teams do you think are in the NFL?
32?
Nope. Oh shit, there are?
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say one thing right here before we continue. I am not a football fan, but I know that there are more teams in the NFL than there are in the NBA.
I didn't expect that. Wait, what teams am I forgetting? All right, moving on.
Yeah, I think we spent enough time on this one. Let's go to one of the more interesting topics you wanted to talk about today.
Yeah, so I mean, staying on the topic of very prolific men in their field. I thought it'd be wise to talk about my buddy, Uncle Joe. So, a couple weeks ago, our president, Joe Biden, reaffirmed his commitment to addressing climate change by creating green energy jobs and building out a, quote, modern and sustainable infrastructure, end quote, toward his continued goal of reaching a carbon-free energy sector in the U.S. by 2035. Given how rates have been going down for solar and electric power, upwards of 70 to 80% of what it was previous years, and given the move to fight climate change, I thought it'd be wise to kind of visit that. It seems to be one of the fastest growing industries, and at least in our lifetimes, one of the most prolific industries to kind of keep your eye on. I'm not sure if our president has rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement. I don't know if you know.
Yes.
He has.
Yes.
So it's one step forward, given the steps back we've taken in previous years. What do you think? Do you think 2035 is possible? Is that a goal that is feasible?
Well, what is the exact criteria for this? Because I'm kind of unclear on what he's trying to accomplish. Like, how does he what specific benchmark is he trying to clear by then?
You know, it's politics, so it's a very broad statement that he made. But I guess just in the future, do you expect our energy production in the U.S. to surpass 50% renewable energy by 2035?
Difficult to say. I think we're slowly relying less and less on fossil fuels, but I think as certain current events have shown us, I don't think renewable energy can always be relied upon for the base power level that I think a lot of cities need just to be operational. Um, Ideally, you would have something like nuclear fusion, right? You'd have
Mm-hmm.
nuclear fusion reactors everywhere, creating this energy with near perfect efficiency. But until we get to that point, I think you're always going to have problems with solar in colder areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially with a lot of snowfall. Although, I read something earlier today. You know how there's many different companies that specialize in photovoltaic cells that go on top of homes, right? To collect solar energy. So Tesla is one of those companies, and Tesla apparently their cells have a special property about them that actually has a heating element. So whenever it's snowing on the roof, over time, the accumulation of heat will actually melt the snow so that you always have a direct window to the sun. And even in those winter storms and those colder months, you can still have some reliable and consistent source of energy
Huh.
coming from these solar panels. So I like those innovations. I like those improvements on solar power, on geothermal, which is huge, as you already know. That's where we get a lot of power from. I like the improvements that are already happening, and I like Biden's push to really motivate all private industry to get there quicker. But whether or not we get there, literally 2035 is in the next 14 years. I think that's difficult to say. I think it remains to be seen exactly, you know, how much or how quickly rather people are willing to change their vehicles, let's say, to EVs.
Sure.
That's just one thing, right? And moving forward, I just like to see more of a focus on green energy in general, not necessarily to meet any kind of 50% quota by 2035, but I'd like to see more, biofuel out there, right? Like taking algae, which is basically pond scum, converting that into fuel that you can use. I'm glad you find that hilarious, but
It's just
it
your
is
word use or your word choice is amazing.
it is
Scum.
true. Yeah, it is pond scum. Absolutely. It is the filth layering on the film on top of the waters and whatnot. But you can even take different biofuels from like corn, right?
Sure.
Like you can use up corn and other types of crops to basically create these sustainable and environmentally friendly sources of fuel. And the problem has always been the amount of capital investment and infrastructure required to really do this at a large scale.
Sure.
It's very expensive, and it still is expensive. I think that's always been in favor of the fossil fuel industry because the infrastructure for them is already there, and so they can always have better control of cost in a way.
Sure.
They can always offer that lower price offering for consumers, which staves away the overall change and turning of the tables, if you will, toward the EVs, toward all the electric and renewable energy resources. But I am an optimist, and I'd like to think that if we have a string of presidents, not just Biden himself, but a string of presidents that all believe in this goal of becoming a cleaner, greener, leaner society, then maybe we can achieve that by 2035. But what do you think, Ben?
No, I think it's the push. We're seeing it a lot in regards to our private sector reacting to the disruptors of the industry that focus on renewable sources of energy. The easiest one to bring up is automobiles, right? Tesla,
Sure.
being a huge disruptor, is now what, a Fortune 500 company run by
Mm,
Iron Man himself, Elon Musk.
yes, sir. That's right.
And when it first came out, so many pundits were talking down on him, saying, "Hey, man, why'd you sell off your PayPal? You should have, rode off into the sunset with the millions upon millions of dollars that you had." But instead, he believed, and he persevered through all of the hate, all of the tribulations he faced across all of his businesses, which focus on the progress of mankind, uh, especially in the renewable sector. It shows that it's paid off because there are so many automobile companies, very prevalent and highly respected automobile companies, that are now promising to have a full fleet of electric vehicles. And when I mean full fleet, I mean all of their fleet being electric vehicles. Some saying by 2030, some as late as 2040, but still making that commitment in the public eye. I think that though the quote unquote infrastructure of the US may not reach high levels of expectations that Biden is pushing forth in his agenda right now, the movement is gaining inertia. And when the private sector is following and adding to that inertia by doing it themselves, it showcases that these intellectual leaders of these highly prominent companies are believe, or rather, they believe in electric vehicles and other sorts of renewable energy sources. So I think I agree with you. Maybe not in a certain time frame that people are planning and setting forth, but it's bound to happen in the future, sooner than later.
And you bring up a great point about the EVs because one thing that I think discourages a lot of people from buying their first electric vehicle, as you well know, is the cost, right?
Yeah,
The average price of an electric vehicle is considerably higher than that of a gas guzzling vehicle that we're very used
sure.
to. But the
Love it,
one
by the way.
way, shout out to Draymond Green, yes,
Oh,
sir.
hell yeah, man. Burning that gas.
So, it's hard to follow that up. But what the disruptor, the D, the slippery D disruptor.
There we
But
go.
I would say that one way we can actually help that front is by having more and more companies in the private industry compete in the same space as a Tesla.
Yeah, sure.
And what do I mean by that? Tesla is, the cheaper one. The Model 3, I think, is about 35 grand, maybe,
I
something
think
like this, right?
starting, yeah.
Starting, right? So most likely you're paying 40 or whatever.
Hmm.
So if you could have Toyota, Subaru, all the other brands, Nissan, get in on this and have this competition where, oh, okay, I'm not just forced to buy a Tesla or a Nissan Leaf or whatever it is. I have a whole plethora of options here.
Hmm.
That would naturally drive the prices down because everybody would be, competing against each other.
Sure.
And not only that, I would expect as you know, the most expensive part of these EVs is what? The battery,
Sure.
right? Manufacturing that battery is very difficult, making it more efficient, making the range longer than like 300 miles to
Hmm.
one charge. It's very, very tough. But as with all things, Moore's law tells us that what? The number of transistors will keep increasing beyond a certain point, right? You're going to have these limitations with technology, but we're not there yet. I think you're going to find EVs become really economical and have
Sure.
superior range sooner than later. Probably in the next 4 years, Don, you're going to have cars out there, maybe from Tesla, maybe from General Motors, I don't know, with the range averaging to be 500 miles. Think
Sure.
about that. 500 miles to one charge. That is
Yeah.
phenomenal. That
Yeah.
is really
No.
good.
And I
Yeah.
think in an interview very recently that Elon Musk did, there are many people that were pushing for higher and higher mileage of their
Mm,
vehicles.
mm,
But Elon, and this was breathtaking to me, it made me think a little bit deeper, um, saying it would be fantastic. We could reach 500, 600, 700 miles,
mm.
but is it necessary? Why would we want to put on an additional ton or two of batteries and disrupt the weight of the car when we could get by with just one, what is it, battery sleep, basically, to give you everyday needs? What makes sense for the consumer? I think the capabilities are out there. It's just Elon is similar to what Apple does with their phones or Samsung does with their phones. What does the consumer really need, and helping to drive that rather than providing everything under the sun? And in doing so, he's minimizing the waste that can occur over time, right? Because these batteries eventually will die out and have to be recycled. But if we don't have to use it in the first place, why put us through that?
So I think something that adds to your argument here and adds to the story is changing the way we view the infrastructure of EVs. Because right now, um, you have more gas stations than you do electric vehicle chargers, but that will slowly change.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the years to come, you're going to have more and more places, and you already see it all the time in parking structures and in front of some parks and whatnot. You'll always see these electric vehicle charging stations, but I think eventually this will become so common that it may tie along to what you're saying. Instead of having more bulk with additional batteries to
Mm-hmm.
supply you with a 500-mile range, you can be perfectly fine with a 200 or 300-mile range with a very efficient battery, but you'll have many more options to charge.
Mm-hmm.
Charging at work, charging at daycare, charging at the grocery store, whatever it may be. And the cost of it and the time it takes for these superchargers to charge your vehicle to like half full, a quarter full, whatever it is, that will also go down. So I think that may tie into Elon Musk's philosophy. It's not necessarily about battery capacity, as you alluded to. It's more about changing the way we view electric vehicle refueling, right? And the proximity of these stations, um, the time it takes to charge whatever capacity you have. I think all these things will come into play. And one step we can take, an additional step, is once we have more and more, I think, electric vehicles on the road, these EVs are coming with the latest and greatest sensors, safety equipment, and even like luxury items inside the car. I suppose items that would be considered luxury, years ago, will become standard basically for these EVs. But not only that, I think you have a golden opportunity here to really push the AI technology for vehicles in general. And what do I mean by that? I know uh, people enjoy driving. I know that's something that a lot of people like to do, especially when there's no traffic and you can really enjoy on a nice weekend. You can, if you have a nice car, for instance, you can really feel the engine running and the vibration. You can feel the road and everything, all the ways that you enjoy the sport of driving, if you will. But eventually, I think we'll get to a point where everybody's really just commuting from point A to point B, and why not make it a safer experience? Why have to worry about human blunder costing lives? Why do you have to worry about people drinking and driving? Why do you have to worry about people texting and driving and all those distractions that could happen in a car? Why not just build a AI infrastructure and change the public perception of AI such that we use it as a tool to benefit our lives. And we inherently have to place more trust in it, sure. But the way I look at it, the more and more vehicles that are on the road that are synced in some way and have this AI capability that works in conjunction with traffic lights and smart grids and everything else that's available out there, that should inherently reduce the number of accidents and collisions and save lives. Because when you remove the human element from these very, very, you know, critical decisions that people make going 90 miles per hour, slamming their brakes really hard, dodging something, whatever it may be, you'll also reduce the number of accidents and everything. So I think with the EV push, Biden should also push for AI and just smart cars everywhere having this autonomous control where you can be safely navigated to wherever you need to go without having to worry about your life being in peril. What do you think about that idea?
I'm scared of AI. I'm gonna be honest. I think
Mm,
it's weird.
mm,
We're already cyborgs in some way, shape, or form because we are basically glued to our phones nowadays. And to think that can progress more is scary to me. It may be me showing my age with all these white hairs that I have, and
mm.
me not wanting to see technology take over our lives, but it's the natural, not even natural progression. I would say it's a progression of things. I think that reducing human error, which tends to be basically the reason why errors exist in all facets of or in all industries, will definitely help, especially when it comes to these EVs and just generally people going out and driving. Um, but like, what happens when an autonomous vehicle hits somebody? Who's to blame?
Well, that's actually a great question, and I know people in the industry that actually are working on stuff like this. They're working on the algorithms. They're working on the coding that goes into uh, making that kind of a decision in a split second, right? Who do you sacrifice? What do you protect?
Mm,
And it's never easy. It's never easy. I think honestly, there's going to be growing pains regardless of how you program it, regardless of how you control the algorithm. And my belief is I would rather have the mindset of being optimistic and of being in favor of this and going into it with an open mind, fully knowing that, yes, there will be problems. There will always be some things that cause a riot, that cause issues in, the news and public media, just, saying, oh, look at this. This is a warning. If you adopt this technology, it's going to be scary. Your life is going to be impacted, but ultimately, I think it will benefit more people than it hurts.
mm,
And I'm of the belief that technology should be a tool that we use to make our lives easier in certain ways so we can spend the time doing what we really want to do. So I think I fully accept that there is risk. I fully accept that people will have to be held to account, and that's a very complicated thing to deal with, but I'd rather just be optimistic and say, you know what, let's see what happens. Let's try it out, and let's trust in people. Let's trust in the global community making this a successful endeavor.
yeah, no, and I think that's a good way of going about it. I think we could talk about this forever if we had wanted to, because you could basically be on both sides of the coin and be right in your own way. But there's one thing that is always right. One thing that will always trump anything we put in front of it.
Mm.
That thing is Mother Nature. Mother Nature, the thing that we've been trying to help with our whole EV technology and our president trying to make it a little bit easier for her to live and continue for us to prosper, has turned a little south for us, I think you'd say. There's been cases across, what is it, the lower 48 states? Basically all of the U.S., not us, though, in Southern California. Hell yeah. Um, But other places where they've been seeing record lows, especially in Texas. I think that's the most prominent one shown across the media right now, where
Mhm.
they faced temperatures as low as -2 in some places, and it's scary. It's scary. I've seen some videos where these places are basically having huge car wrecks just because they're not used to driving in such conditions. And there's been stores that have sold out of all of their stock, these supermarkets in particular, that showcases how scared people are and how they're basically trying to get by even without their energy sources. That is a scary situation to be in, man. I mean, we kind of faced that, what was it, last year when things were flying off the shelves and wouldn't be restocked for weeks, sometimes months in some places. And we're seeing it happen again, but for a different cause. And this cause is weather, man. Like, do you have any colleagues that have faced these crazy times and these crazy weather swings?
A good buddy of mine lives in Dallas,
Hmm.
and he's pretty much in the heart of this, right?
Yeah.
And I've been messaging him probably since last week, almost every day. He's been updating me about what's been going on over there. And the first notification I got from him was basically a video of one of the major freeways or highways that cut through the Fort Worth area, I think, like
Sure.
that's near Dallas. And man, oh man, I think you touched on this, but because of the ice on the roads, cars just lost all traction,
Hmm.
and they had no choice but to smash into already a two-car pileup with like a FedEx truck and a
Yeah.
smaller car, and it kept going, and it was going on for like 15, 20 minutes until like 160 plus vehicles
Yeah.
were all smashed and mangled together. And the worst part about it was people died, man. I think
Yeah.
6 people total died,
Yeah.
along with like 50, 60 people with injuries.
Yeah.
And and some people who were like there at the scene, they were trying to help, but it's one of those situations where as you're trying to pull a woman who's already half mangled inside of her little Corolla,
Yeah.
another car, a semi, is
Yeah.
flying at you 40 miles per hour with no brakes working
Yeah.
because it's ice on the roads. If you want to protect yourself, you got to stop. You got to pull out and run away.
Sure.
But knowing that full well that woman is going to die. And that's exactly what happened. One of the most horrifying things I've read recently, for sure. So that's just one thing that I heard. But on top of that, my buddy, since he lives in like the McKinney, Dallas, Texas area, he's been feeling it, man. Like the electricity has gone out
Damn.
multiple days. Water hasn't been flowing as quickly as it should.
Oh, okay. Okay. But still some
Yeah,
water.
still some water, but
Okay.
it's gotten to a point, and I'll actually send you a picture on Messenger. It's gotten to a point where to kind of supplement the drinking water, which they do have,
Sure.
they're actually getting snow from outside,
Ah, I've seen
and
this. I've seen this. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they're just kind
yeah,
of.
they're just melting it inside in like
Yeah.
huge pots and pans. And
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's like third world country status, no
Sure.
joke. And food is very tough to come by too, because as you mentioned, it's slim pickings, just like it was over here in the early pandemic days. And it's just a really tough time. But one thing that stood out to me, and this is what my friend always repeated: the people in Texas are very nice. The
Sure.
neighbors are very, very neighborly. Everybody seems to have a truck, so your car will never get stuck. There's always a way to tow your car out of whatever rut you're in, whatever snow infested region of the state that you're into. And not only that, but if you're short on something, neighbors will help. If you're low on food, the neighbors are always willing to help you. And this is a guy that used to live in California, so his perspective is very interesting, right? Because he lived in California for probably, half his life, and then he moved to Texas for work, and he loves it there. He does not miss California. Sure, the weather's great, and he misses the people, of course, but as far as the lifestyle and the opportunities that were there for him in Texas, it trumps California, no pun intended, in more ways than one. So I think you could say he found a beautiful silver lining in all of this calamity that's been going on over there. and he wouldn't change it for anything. He wouldn't trade it for the world. So, people over there, man, they're tough. Texans are built very strong. They're cut from a different cloth, you could say, than you or I. I don't think, I don't know about you, but I don't think I could survive, in those frigid conditions for too long, man. I'm too used to 60 degrees, sunny. A little bit of rain makes me want to go inside. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
I'm
Oh
a
yeah.
little spoiled. I'm a little spoiled over
Oh
here.
no, we definitely are, man. Every time it hits 65 and under, it's sweater weather for me. Whereas for other people, that's like the perfect temperature for them to basically rock a tank in shorts and enjoy some sunlight. That's it's definitely odd, man. It's definitely we're definitely blessed and lucky to be living here in California, and by golly, we kind of do pay for it, but we are blessed
Mhm.
nonetheless. Because we are getting those better perks that other states aren't able to. I mean, Texas. I've been to Texas. Texas is a nice city or nice state. Nice state.
It's
I've
just,
been to Houston, which is a nice city.
yes, yes, yes.
Went for a conference for when back in my consulting days, and
Ooh.
the portions were amazing. And I remember the lady serving, or serving as a cashier was like, "Hey, you sure you don't want to get something like this?" And then you make it happen. You say why, and she explains the whole thing. Before even getting tipped or doing anything, just trying to share her experience and that love that they have inherently. It feels like a warm hug every time, and
Mm.
it's something I miss. Because it was basically those cafeteria trays.
Yeah.
We would basically one serving was a full on cafeteria tray of barbecue. And you're like, oh, this is my spot. Like I love it. I love it. You can't get that here in California. All we get is like an avocado with everything that's definitely upcharged. So
Yeah, this is a great point that you're making because I've been to Dallas, right? And in Dallas, the one thing you notice, there's a common saying in Texas how everything's bigger in Texas, right? Like
it really is.
stores, the gas stations, like
Sure.
everything just has more wide, expansive space. That is so true. I just found that like even the sky looked bigger. It was the weirdest thing, but I would
Ah,
look up sometimes just driving through those highways and I'd be like, wow, the clouds are massive. Like there's so much open sky up top. It's just wild. And I just really appreciated that change in scenery and lifestyle and just I guess people going from one state to another. So shout out to the people in Texas. Shout out to my friend in Dallas. I hope things are getting better. I know it's warming up now, which is kind of a problem because with the snow there
yep.
and it's melting, it could cause some flooding in certain areas, but
Sure.
hopefully not too bad. But yeah, man, Mother Nature is not to be trifled with.
Yeah, man. Mother Nature is one heck of a B word, bitch, that you don't want to be pissing off. But dude, another thing that Mother Nature has control of is hurricanes. But in
Ah,
this particular case, it's not the kind of hurricane we're thinking of. We're thinking of, gusts of wind.
mm.
Those. I was thinking Pidgey from Pokemon. Those gusts that you see coming at you at
Oh yeah,
supersonic
man.
speeds, carrying everything and anything that they see that's in their path and
Mm.
unable to move. Well, it seems like we got ourselves a hurricane coming, but this
Mm.
time it's the COVID hurricane. The COVID hurricane, for all of you, has four parts. Part one, mutations. We've seen the UK strain. Is it the UK strain? I forget. Some European strain. That is.
Yeah, that's right. The B117 is from the UK.
There
That's
we
right.
go. Super contagious and highly infective rate. It's one part, and we could check that part off. Second part, vaccine delays. At least here in Southern California, and I'm pretty sure throughout the U.S., there's been some delays in the vaccines, both in quantity and timing. So people aren't getting vaccinated as quickly as we had anticipated in the beginning. Third part, relaxed preventions. At least to me, it seems that here in Orange County and in many parts of LA County, the preventative measures that we've taken in curbing social gatherings and other public gathering spaces is starting to relax. Less people now are wearing their masks than before. That is another check. And fourth, the possible reinfection of people with new strains of COVID. Now, there isn't too much data on it right now, given the severity of not wanting to actually see the particular strain, but to just make sure people aren't getting sick. But with all the mutations going on and the rest or the other three parts of the hurricane being happening, I could see reinfections going up again. It's a scary thing, man. I still remember when we first started recording and I was talking about, or you'd asked me about COVID, and I just remember saying, it's like the flu. It's like the flu. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. Well, God damn it, Mother Nature put me in my place. I gotta say. I gotta say, man. I thought we were all high and mighty, and I still stand by it. It's the flu. But, there's been other cases like the Spanish flu that pretty much wiped out so many people before. And other historical pandemics that I should have learned my lesson from. But, as in many things in this podcast, you can tell I'm not the most learned person here.
Yeah, I mean, we learned today that Don didn't know that there were 32 teams in the
I
NFL.
still don't believe it. I'm going to look it up later. There's got to be one that's in there. Like, it's got to be like an AFL team or something.
Well, they do have the isn't there like two conferences? What do you call them? The American League and
the National League. Yeah, National League. Is it National League? Now I'm questioning everything.
Is that baseball? I think that's baseball. We might be fucking up there a little bit. It's okay. We're on to a different
I gotta stop drinking.
Truer words have never been spoken.
It won't happen.
Truer lies. So you touched on many things, and let me just kind of recapture it for the audience, since maybe they don't have the same kind of attention span as you do.
Yeah.
So is 4 components of the hurricane. Number 1 being mutations. Number 2, vaccine delays. Number 3, relaxed prevention, I guess, and relaxed social distancing measures. And number 4, possible reinfection of people with new variants of COVID. So those are 4 things. Now, I want to challenge some of these, okay? So number 1, the mutations, right?
Sure.
I understand there is the more transmissible B117 variant from the UK. There's a South African variant, the Brazil one. There's even new ones developing as we speak. But so far, I think all the vaccines that are out there are proven to at least help in not only reducing the probability that you'll have the worst symptoms and even death from these diseases if you contract it, but also reducing the general transmissivity, right, or the transmission of the viruses. So I think even if there are new variants, I'm not too concerned yet, because I don't think we've seen enough data that suggests that the current grouping of vaccines we have from Pfizer, from Moderna, I know AstraZeneca has a little bit of issue with the South Africa variant. I heard about that. But I think it's still somewhat effective in reducing the probability you'll have the worst possible symptoms. So that's important. Vaccine delays. Now, I think we anticipated with the global pandemic, right? This was going to be an issue. I think vaccine rollout is something that every nation is trying very, very hard to make sure is going smoothly as possible. But as you know, nothing's perfect. Human error can be involved. I think you mentioned before in a previous podcast that a particular batch of Moderna vaccines, one supply, was just tainted in some way. It was compromised, and people were getting sick because of it. And even beyond that, if you look at Pfizer, I think part of the reason why certain, European Union countries are not getting as much vaccine as they anticipated is because Pfizer's facility needs some kind of recalibration or maintenance, and that takes a delay, right? So you actually have to shut down production for some time, causing further delays in the supply chain and massive delays for people getting their second dose or even their first dose in some cases. But I think whenever you're considering such a global, uh, pandemic with a difficult supply chain situation for every nation, this is expected. And I understand it's part of your 4 components, but it is something that I think we expected more or less. And with that being said, globally, we are vaccinating more people all the time. I think as the weeks go by, our numbers are looking better in terms of, ICU bed availability, in terms of, number of cases reported, number of deaths. I think globally, things are looking better on the whole. So that addresses the vaccine delays point. You also mentioned relaxed prevention and social distancing. Well, I actually disagree with your contention that less people are wearing masks than before. Maybe this is anecdotal for both of us, but
Hmm.
my view is I think people are wearing masks. In some cases, they're double masking. A new trend that's been going on, if you're not aware, is wearing two kinds of masks, right? Like basically adding more protection so that you have a tighter seal, number one, for your original mask, and also providing a little bit more filtering so you're blocking a little bit more particles. I do see people like that just walking around, whether they're in grocery stores or just taking a walk with their family. People are double masking, especially when they think that they're going to be in some kind of a public environment with a large group of people that they don't know. So that's been going on. And with the relaxed social distancing, I don't think people are. I should take that back. You didn't say relax social distancing. You said just relax preventative measures with like stores opening up and everything. That is something that scares me. Probably more than anything else is the fact that you have Governor Newsom saying, "Oh yeah, things can start opening up again. You can go back to restaurants again, at least for outdoor dining." I think you know the whole issue with schools is kind of controversial because even though it's been shown that students, when they mix and mingle, yeah, they might get sick, but they're not going to have the worst symptoms of COVID. You're not really worried about them specifically. You're more worried about them bringing it back to people back home, right? Whether it's elderly, their relatives, their, you know, yeah, people with comorbidities, whatever it may be. You worry about the children being vectors of transmission. So the whole idea of opening up schools sometime in March, some people are proponents of it because they think the greater effects will be better. Like, oh, this will open up opportunities for adults to go back to work if the children are taken care of at least part of the day at schools. So there's a lot of things over there that's controversial, but I'm sure you'd agree. After a certain point, the economy should be opening up, right? I mean, there's always the debate between public health and the economy, right? They're always fighting against each other. But after a certain point, is it worth having people out of work for so long that they suffer these long term issues and maybe they don't have a chance to go to the doctor or go to any kind of treatment because the priority is being given to COVID related issues. And so they postpone some surgery or they postpone some checkup where they could find out, where they could have found out that they had some kind of issue going on and they could have gotten that resolved if they went. So there's all these things, right? And finally, possible reinfection of people with new variants of COVID. I think you mentioned that. Yeah, that's always a possibility, but I think we should be clear that variants do exist of COVID-19, but we're not going to have as frequent strains as we do with the flu, because as you know, and I think Tony might have touched on this many episodes ago, uh, strains happen more commonly with the flu because they do mutate at a far quicker rate. COVID, at least the type of virus that the coronavirus is, isn't known to do that. Strains happen, but largely the way that the vaccines can interact and combat the viruses remains the same. So it is my belief that everything that you see out now with Moderna, Pfizer, even some of the Russian ones and the India ones, they'll be somewhat effective in helping everybody get through this and bring us closer to a global herd immunity. So I actually think your whole idea of a hurricane of COVID-19 is a little bit blown out of proportion. I don't think it's that bad. And in fact, I think as the months go on, you'll see the numbers for both new cases and deaths related to COVID decrease around the world. And I think it'll actually get better. But maybe that's just me. Maybe that's A, being optimistic, huh? What do you think?
I think so. I think it's definitely being optimistic because there's a lot of people that are smarter than me, which isn't saying much, but very smarter than me, that have been, you know, showcasing and spreading word about this hurricane. And, you know, we'll see what comes. Something I know you and I can both agree on is we're still waiting on that silver bullet that will hopefully come up in our eyes that will help solve or at least mitigate all the problems that exist with COVID, and hopefully it happens sooner than later. You know, we could find that silver bullet, or we could find that ash rose, that gray ash, And I think that brings us to our next topic.
That's
Cowboy
right.
Bebop.
And absolutely. So why don't you go ahead and kick off that famous music, that famous intro that gets us into it.
Are we doomed to a cold and heartless future in which computer says yes or computer says no, with the grim finality of an emperor in the arena?
Man, I thought that was a pretty good segue. Until you started laughing, and I'm like, oh, I'm second guessing myself here mid speech. Like, come on.
No, I mean, I was laughing because I was like, wait, is it really called like Ash Rose?
It was like, I thought it was
Was
great. It's gray ash when I was like going through it.
Yeah.
But I saw it as an ash rose. So I was like, oh, well, it looked like a rose-ish. I think
No.
in the translation it said ash rose. But gray ash.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, I got you.
yeah.
I mean, this episode, I have to say, like, it was one of my favorites so far, for multiple reasons, which I'll get into a little bit later. But to provide everybody a bit of a synopsis, so basically, you know how for Cowboy Bebop so far, and we're about 8 episodes in. We should say officially what the name of this one is, huh? So this is episode 8, called Waltz for Venus, and as the title says, this is about, or it takes place at least, in the planet of Venus, which Don, you've been to a couple of times, and
Plenty of times.
plenty of times, right? And you know, I've yet to visit Venus. I've been to Mars a little bit every now and then, but Venus, you know, it has something very interesting in the atmosphere. Basically, there's like this type of ash or some kind of like precipitation, you could say,
Spores.
that spores. That's right, spores that kind of come from the heavens above Venus, and most people are okay with this. You know, they may experience a little bit of sickness. They call it Venus sickness, but they'll live. But some people, they really get the worst impact of it. It's kind of interesting how we can relate this to what's going on in our real lives, right, with COVID, because for 95% of people that contract COVID, they can probably survive it without any kind of long-term repercussions. But for a very small percentage, it could be very much debilitating. And so, what we discover in this episode is, you know, we got our usual suspects, right? We got Spike, we got Faye. They're basically, you know, on this plane at the same time, and it's being hijacked. There's a couple of these, you know, very bad men and women who are trying to take money from everybody riding this little, you know, space flight to Venus. And you know how Spike is. Spike is always cool as a cool cucumber. He could be sleeping. He was actually taking a nap on the flight. And he was the only person that wasn't cowering in fear to the hijacker. And so they had a little bit of a confrontation, and Spike, being like water, you could say, he just fluidly, you know, deftly avoids all the blows and the gunfire, and he manages to nab all the suspects, bring them into the Venus airport, into the police station over there, finally get a payday, which I think Don and I are very happy about.
Oh, hell yeah.
It seems like every episode they try and they fail to capture somebody, but finally they collected the bounty at the spaceport for 1.5 million woolongs, which is quite a lot, man. You can buy a lot of bell peppers and beef. You can buy a lot of prairie oysters with that Skrilla. But interesting thing is, on that same flight, there was another gentleman by the name of Rocco Bonero, and he was trying to get, you know, some package. We don't know what's inside this package, but he was trying to take that package with him to somebody. And you see him basically negotiate and haggle with one of the desk attendants over there at the spaceport, like, hey, you know, please help me ship this over. And they get down to a price, and he sees Spike walking along, and he's like, you know what, just whatever, take my money, go, I gotta talk to this guy. And then you realize, you know, this guy Rocco, he is almost in awe by Spike Siegel, because Spike is this very cool looking guy who's very good at martial arts and judo and karate and everything, and he's able to just handle any kind of tough situation with such grace. And essentially, Rocco wants to be the student to Spike's sensei, to Spike's, you know, master. And Spike reluctantly, after a lot of coercing, agrees, and kind of gives him some skills and whatnot. And this is the part that I think you and I both really enjoyed. Spike essentially said to Rocco, in these situations, it's not really about exerting your own force or exerting your own strength to win the combat. It's really about being as fluid as water. Water can take any shape or form that it's confined to, and you always have to be flexible and nimble enough, excuse me, to get into that shape. So what does that mean? If you're coming at me, Don, with the knife, which is something you tend to do on weekends, and I advise against that, boys and girls,
Hey,
but
you know what? I gotta test the sharpness sometimes.
I know that's true. You are a chef of some kind. So, as Don's coming at me with the knife, I can just gracefully use a sidestep and then trip him with my left leg so he falls over. And that's essentially the type of combat and general life philosophy that Spike was trying to impart on Rocco. But before I continue with the rest of the story, what did you think of that scene in general, man? What did you think of that lesson that Spike gave?
Well, I think it's also a good tenet because across all forms of martial arts, there is a sense of trying to be like water, trying to use the elements that other people try to put against you in your own favor and against theirs. Um, it's I think it's wise words that even you and I can live by, where you just kind of have to flow with it all. You can't be so hard stuck in your ideations. You got to be able to use what's around you in your favor and in the most effortless way whenever you can. I think it showcases first off Spike's, or rather the creators, kind of modeling of Spike like Bruce Lee, who was very well known to be quoted saying like, "Hey, be like Wata, Wata."
Mhm.
Um, but showcasing Spike almost like you said as a mentor or as a sensei or as a master, that he's good at what he does and he's somewhat willing to help people so long as he knows that the motive is pure and good.
Mm, mm. Absolutely. And going along with that train of thought, we learn a little bit more about Rocco because Rocco was actually smuggling a plant, a very, very coveted plant that's worth about 2 million woolongs called gray ash. And gray ash can be harvested and used in some kind of medicinal treatment to cure a disease like a blindness type of disease called venous sickness. And the reason why Rock is doing this is not really for him, but you realize it's for his sister. And Spike, when trying to hunt down Rocco and realizing he also has a bounty on his head, encounters his sister who happens to be blind and suffering from the sickness. And what follows afterward was a very interesting scene on multiple accounts. I'm just gonna kind of tell it to you like I felt it viscerally when I was watching it. So Spike and the sister of Rocco, Stella, who's blind, they're having some nice tea, right? By the windowsill. And, Stella's basically saying, I'm blind, but, it helps me use my other senses. I can really tell what kind of people I'm dealing with, even though I can't see them. And then she quickly says, I can tell you have a good heart. Like you have some kindness in you, some beauty in you. And that's why I'm sharing my tea with you. And Spike said something to the effect of, well, I think whatever beauty or kindness I had in me that went away a long time ago. And that whole scene, Don, along with the music, if you remember, Rocco actually gave Stella, his sister, this music box. And
Mm-hmm.
when Spike opened it, the song that was playing out of it, it was just so, it was almost like hauntingly beautiful. I
Mm-hmm.
guess that's how I describe it. And it really it really captures the essence of Cowboy Bebop for me because we're always talking about Spike Siegel. We're always talking about who is this guy? What's his history? Like what happened to him? Right? What really happened to him? And will the people in his past continue to haunt him? And even though he's living his life now as a bounty hunter, time and time again he encounters people both maybe from his past or maybe complete strangers, that bring something out of him that reminds him of who he used to be. And there's a sadness to it. And I can't really explain it, but the sadness is palpable. Like when I see Spike change his facial expression in response to hearing Stella saying, you have a good heart, I can tell. It's like, wow, that's bringing Spike back mentally into something that maybe he put away. Maybe he really doesn't want to open up again in his life. But what did you think of that scene when they were just having tea and kind of getting to know each other?
Yeah, it's one of those. Is it a moment of regret? What is causing this? These suppressed moments that we all want to hear. Like, why is Spike the way that he is?
Mm.
Um, and I think, you and I, or at least all humans, always have something deep down inside that has been critical to why they're molded that the way that they are, and those particular shapes that form in that clay that we are. Sometimes we don't want to know what hands have touched it or what tools have touched it. And, um, when we look at other people, we want to know so much. But we do our best to hide many things, unlike Kid Cudi, who seems to just share everything from time to time. He's not like Spike at all, who's very sly, very calculated, very smooth. Um,
Here I am. Ooh.
I think that that scene is just heartfelt because we've only had a glimpse so far of what Spike is, but can be. And similar to past episodes where I mentioned that even animals like Spike, now the blind can kind of feel Spike being
Mm.
lovable, being worthwhile to
Mm.
share tea with. Something that I
Mm.
assume to be a hot commodity in Venus. It's heartfelt. It makes you love Spike some more, regardless of what made him the way that he is or
Mm.
was.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as the story progresses, Rocco, after giving the gray ash to Spike, he told him to meet up at a certain place and time. Rocco runs into a little bit of trouble here too with the gang of outlaws that's chasing him for stealing the gray ash, but Spike eventually meets him again. And, you know, all chaos ensues here because the gang is right there in hiding. They shoot out with Spike, and the Bebop, flown in by Jet, comes in. Faye's in there too, hunting them down. But in all the madness, Rocco actually takes down. Actually, not sorry, Rocco. Rocco gets taken down. He gets shot,
Yeah.
and that was so sad because it's like right before he got shot, he was finally able to use Spike's advice, to use that mentality of being as fluid and flowing like water to sidestep a charging criminal and just get out of the dodge. And it's almost like at that moment, and I shouldn't simplify Rocco's life to this, but maybe for the sake of the story, I should. His life's purpose was achieved, right? Like he was finally trying to do something. He was trying to be like his idol, and I'm sure he only met his idol like the other day, but he was trying to do something so cool that was just so inspiring for him, so motivational for him. And he kind of accomplished that in two fronts. Number one, he was able to pull off that move, but I think by dying, by really getting killed in that space, and saying those final words to Spike about his sister, and Spike kind of admitting, "Look, I know the situation." I think Spike knew at that moment he had to continue the goal of Rocco after his death. So he took the seeds and whatever bounty was collected from these clowns, instead of using it on the Bebop and himself and Faye, he decided, you know what, the right thing is to pay for Stella's surgery and to give her the seeds she needs so she can grow whatever medicinal herbs that exist to cure her blindness. And I think that was just so beautiful. It's so touching. It's like Spike again sacrifices his own personal benefit and gain to help somebody who's only going to be in his life for a small amount of time and then he'll likely never see again. That kind of selflessness is a common theme that evolves out of this Cowboy Bebop series, and I like seeing it. And especially the final scene where he comes back one last time to the hospital to see Stella, I guess before the surgery. Stella's happy to see him, but she quickly realizes by touching his face and the lack of words coming out of Spike that her brother Rocco has died. But he died, in Spike's opinion, a good man, a man that cared deeply for his sister. And I think Spike communicated that very clearly to Stella, even though Stella was mourning. And I think that makes Spike a good person to us as well. I think the audience is supposed to find Spike as kind of a fallen angel of sorts. I think that's the best way I can describe him. He is a fallen angel because fallen angels can be seen as a devil, right? You can see him as some kind of a demon, but he is still an angel walking the streets of men, and he finds ways to spread kindness, spread joy, even, or make someone's day. And if it comes at the sacrifice of something that belongs to him, whether it's financial gain or his own time, his own blood, whatever it is, he'll do it. And so that to me made this episode all the more special. The music, the characters involved, the whole interplay between Rocco and Spike, master versus student. Um, I loved it, man. I thought it was one of the best episodes so far.
I think it was a a heartfelt episode. Because here I was thinking, oh, dope, Rocco's going to join the crew. It's going to be cool. He's going to be able to deliver it. You know, his sister's going to be fantastically fine. They're going to be rich, or at least make some money. But, you know, I thought it was Spike's opportunity to have a sidekick, a legitimate sidekick, because Faye's just been fucking shit up.
Faye like just takes his money, right? Like
Yeah,
the very,
yeah.
the very first thing, it's like, I want my cut. I want to go.
Yeah, then she goes and gambles it all away and loses it all. So,
Yeah.
you know, it'd be
Yeah.
nice to finally see Spike get a break. I think he hasn't really gotten one yet. We thought at the beginning of the episode he finally got his break by getting an easy cash out, but he ends up using that break for the benefit of others. And it's like almost hard to watch this seemingly endless struggle that Spike chooses to be in. But it's something that you and I both can agree on that, or will agree on, I'm sure of it. We do that if it's for the right cause. Without a, you know, in a heartbeat, we drop everything if it was for the right purpose, and it was especially for those that we love, and was for the common good more so than yourself. So
Absolutely.
I think
And-
it's a great episode. I like it. I can't wait for more episodes.
Yes, sir. And one thing that I will say before we close this episode for the fans in attendance, for the legions of fans in attendance, I'll leave you with this quote from Bruce Lee. Be like water making its way through cracks. Do not be assertive, but adjust to the object, and you shall find a way around or through it. If nothing within you stays rigid, outward things will disclose themselves. Empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless like water. If you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, and it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes a teapot. Now, water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.